NASCAR champion Kyle Busch, his family revealing he died from severe pneumonia that then progressed into sepsis.
When news broke that Kyle Busch had passed away, the NASCAR world fell silent. The racing community, known for its fierce competition and larger-than-life personalities, suddenly grappled with an incomprehensible loss. But it wasn't until Dale Earnhardt Jr. shared his thoughts on social media that people began to understand the human story behind the headline. The journey of two men who once battled viciously on and off the track, only to discover something far more meaningful in the final chapters of their lives. What Earnhardt Jr. revealed wasn't just a tribute to a fallen competitor. It was a window into Kyle's last days, his mindset, and the dreams that were left unfulfilled. The relationship between Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt Jr. had been one of modern racing's most contentious rivalries. For over a decade, from the mid-2000s through the 2010s, these two talented drivers engaged in heated exchanges both on the racetrack and in the media. Their conflicts were legendary. When Rick Hendrick made the decision to release Kyle from his team to make room for Dale Jr., it created a wound that seemed like it would never fully heal. The racing community watched these two men wage their battles with intensity that went beyond typical competitive spirit, their mutual animosity becoming a staple of NASCAR conversation. Fans debated endlessly about who was more talented, who was more deserving, and who would ultimately have the last word in their rivalry. Yet somewhere along the way, something shifted. The years passed, both men matured, and perspectives changed. According to Earnhardt Jr.'s account, it was Kyle who made the first move toward reconciliation. Kyle walked into Dale's motorhome one day and initiated a conversation that would have been unimaginable just years earlier. They talked about their racing operations, their teams, and the direction of their careers. It was a simple moment, but it represented a turning point. From that initial conversation, a genuine friendship began to blossom. The two men who had spent years making each other's professional lives difficult gradually learned to appreciate each other's talents and recognize their shared passion for racing. As their friendship deepened, they began doing media appearances together, laughing about the contentious moments from their past. They could reminisce about the Richmond door slam, the trade between teams, and all the heated moments that once defined their relationship. But now, instead of anger, there was understanding. There was respect. And most importantly, there was hope for a future where these two could collaborate rather than compete. This transformation was particularly moving because it demonstrated that even the deepest conflicts in sports could be overcome with time, maturity, and genuine effort from both parties. The detail that struck everyone hardest was the plan they were making for the summer. Kyle had expressed interest in driving one of Dale Jr.'s late model cars at North Wilkesboro. For those unfamiliar with racing, this would have been a spectacular development. Two legends of the sport coming together, with fans of both drivers united in support of a single competitor. Kyle found genuine joy in the idea, laughing at the prospect of NASCAR fans having to cheer for the same driver regardless of their usual loyalties. It was the kind of storyline that NASCAR fans dreamed about. They had planned to meet on a Thursday in late May to fit Kyle's seat at JR Motorsports. Kyle was genuinely excited about this opportunity. It represented not just a collaboration, but a continuation of their restored relationship into the next phase of their lives. That meeting would never happen. Kyle died 8 days before they were scheduled to meet. The tragic timing transformed what should have been a feel-good story into one of heartbreak and unfulfilled potential. Instead of being remembered as the chapter where two fierce rivals became allies, the story would now be about the opportunities lost, the conversations they would never have, and the races they would never run together. On May 10th, Kyle was competing at Watkins Glen in New York. He was driving for Richard Childress Racing, and for the first time that season, his car was genuinely competitive. He was running in the top 10, making passes, and looking like the dominant driver everyone remembered from his years with Joe Gibbs Racing. The road course at Watkins Glen is known for its challenging elevation changes and demanding high G-force corners that can be brutal on drivers dealing with any kind of physical ailment. During the race, Kyle radioed his team with a request. He asked them to have a specific doctor named Bill Heisel available after the race. He said he needed a medical injection to address his discomfort. His spotter asked if Kyle wanted the doctor at the car or at his motorhome. Kyle specified the motorhome. This radio transmission was broadcast live to millions of viewers, but nobody thought twice about it. Kyle had been battling a sinus cold throughout the week, and with the physical demands of a road course race, it made sense that he might need some medical attention. The commentators explained the situation to viewers without any hint of concern. It was simply a driver dealing with a minor illness while competing at a demanding track. Kyle finished the race in 8th position, his best result of the season. He appeared to shake off the discomfort and move forward. But what people didn't realize at the time was that Bill Heisel wasn't just any track medic. Heisel was the director of motorsports medicine at OrthoCarolina and one of the most respected medical professionals in the entire NASCAR garage. Drivers don't specifically request someone like Heisel by name unless they know exactly who he is and understand the severity of what they're dealing with. Kyle knew. Notably, May 10th was also his daughter Lennox's 4th birthday. While his young daughter was celebrating with family at home, Kyle was 2 states away asking a medical professional for help. This detail would later weigh heavily on those who knew him and the sport he represented. 5 days after Watkins Glen, on May 15th, Kyle arrived at Dover Motor Speedway for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race. What unfolded that evening was a masterclass in driving. Kyle qualified on pole position, swept both stages of the race, led 147 of 200 laps, and dominated his competition. He won by over 3 seconds, claiming his 69th victory in the Truck Series. This record-breaking performance showcased the extraordinary talent that made Kyle a special driver. He did what he had done hundreds of times before he got in the truck and won. After the race, when interviewed by Fox Sports reporter Amanda Busick, Kyle was asked why winning never gets old. His answer seemed innocuous at the time, just another driver reflecting on success. He said that you take whatever victories you can get because you never know when the last one is going to be. So you need to cherish them all. He said this with a smile, seemingly content to be back in victory lane doing what he loved. Then, during a press scrum moments later, when asked how many more wins he wanted, Kyle repeated the same sentiment. You never know when the last one is going to be. Within 6 days, Kyle Busch would be gone. Those words, spoken in what seemed like casual reflection, would haunted everyone who heard them afterward. They felt less like ordinary commentary and more like an unintentional prophecy. The day after his dominant victory, Kyle admitted to reporters that he still wasn't feeling great. The cough from the previous week had been substantial, and his overall condition hadn't improved as much as he would have hoped. Nobody panicked. He had just dominated the previous evening. Drivers regularly compete while dealing with illness. That's simply part of the culture in NASCAR. Nobody suspected that what had started as a sinus cold was developing into something far more serious. On May 18th, Kyle's son Brexton turned 11 years old. Kyle posted a carousel of photographs on Instagram showing his son growing up on racetracks and celebrating victories in various victory lanes. He wrote about how proud both he and his wife Samantha were of the young man Brexton was becoming. He expressed confidence that there were no limits to what his son could accomplish. This post would become Kyle's last social media message. 3 days before his death, he was a father celebrating his son's milestone birthday, expressing pride and love for his child. The next day, May 19th, Kyle and Brexton drove to Durham, North Carolina, to attend the grand opening of an Andretti indoor karting facility. Mario Andretti himself was present at the event, sharing stories and celebrating the facility. A man who was at the event later described seeing Kyle and Brexton playing arcade games together in a moment that felt too special to interrupt. Kyle was laughing, fully present with his son, creating memories that would become precious in ways neither of them could have anticipated. Mario Andretti would pull out his phone the next day and show reporters a video from that event, capturing Kyle smiling and shaking his hand. Andretti described it as the shock of his life when he later learned that Kyle had passed away. He reflected on how Kyle always brought a smile to people's faces. On Wednesday, May 20th, Kyle drove to the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina, to do simulator work. This was a routine part of his weekly schedule. Chevrolet racing teams, like Richard Childress Racing, regularly use this facility for engineering work and race preparation. There was nothing unusual about Kyle being there on a Wednesday. At approximately 5:30 in the evening, someone at the facility called emergency services. The emergency call audio, later released by authorities, painted a picture entirely different from the sinus cold everyone had been discussing. The caller told the dispatcher that there was a person experiencing severe shortness of breath who was extremely hot and felt like he was going to lose consciousness. The individual was coughing up blood and was located on a bathroom floor, though he remained conscious and alert. The caller repeated multiple times that Kyle was still awake as paramedics were being dispatched. Kyle was transported from the Concord facility to a hospital in the Charlotte area. The specific hospital was never publicly identified. That emergency call recording became the most important piece of public medical evidence in the entire story. It was the only moment where the outside world could hear what was actually happening inside Kyle's body during his final crisis. Everything else, the sinus cold, the shot at Watkins Glen, the cough at Dover, these were all symptoms of something more serious building in the background. When it finally broke through on that Wednesday evening, it was catastrophic. On Thursday, May 21st, Kyle's family released a statement saying he had experienced a severe illness that resulted in hospitalization. He would not compete in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway that weekend. Richard Childress Racing announced Austin Hill as his replacement. The team stated that Kyle's number 8 Chevrolet would be waiting for him when he recovered. Hours later, a joint statement from the Busch family, Richard Childress Racing, and NASCAR confirmed that Kyle Busch had died. They called him a rare talent, a future Hall of Famer, someone who comes along once in a generation. And then came 2 words that explained nothing: severe illness. No hospital, no condition, no timeline, explaining how a man playing arcade games on Tuesday with his son became a patient in a hospital bed on Thursday. NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell held a press conference at Charlotte Motor Speedway the next day. When asked about the cause of death, he explained they were only 24 hours removed from receiving the phone call, and that out of respect for the family, specific medical details would remain private. He promised transparency would come eventually. O'Donnell then shared a detail that struck everyone deeply. Kyle had texted him on Tuesday, the same day he was at the arcade with Brexton, asking about an over 40 rule so he could compete in all Truck Series races the next year. O'Donnell had discussed this proposal in an internal meeting on Wednesday, and they agreed it was a good idea. That meeting happened while Kyle was collapsing less than 30 minutes away. Richard Childress Racing announced they would retire the number 8 indefinitely. They stated that when Brexton was ready to race, that number would be his to carry, mirroring what the organization did with Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s number 3 decades earlier. Kyle Busch was gone, but his legacy would live on through his son. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.